So first, a marketing slide. So what we're going to talk about today is some Viva Connections dev. You saw, I believe it was last time, Julie Turner demoed some great samples she built, she and Derek, I believe. And so that was very cool. But we want to talk about that a little bit more because Viva Connections ACE development is really kind of the next step or next piece of the evolution for SharePoint Framework. It's not a replacement for, it's rather an extension of SharePoint Framework, another part of SharePoint Framework you could take advantage of to get some customization into the Viva Connections dashboard that's coming up. So this is a marketing slide. It's got lots of stuff on it. So these CardView, so you've got kind of the CardView, which are these little tiles on the screen here. So imagine this is on a mobile device. This would also show up in Teams. It also shows up in SharePoint eventually. You can have a dynamic title and icon. You can kind of change these things around. You can change the text. You can have buttons on these cards. The buttons can change based on what's going on. You have complete control over that sort of thing. We'll talk about a lot more of this in detail. The next step here is this adaptive card. You can have multiple different kinds of views here. So whereas the card view, that first piece, is very fixed. There's three, right now, there's three fixed layouts you can use in those cards. And for the quick views, which is that center thing, those are completely sculpted by adaptive cards. So you have complete control over what goes on there. So you can have simple text display, you can have images, all sorts of other stuff. And then finally, the sort of third part of this is then linking out to another app. Could be a Teams app, could be a SaaS app, lots of options there, link right to a Teams channel, things like that. So lots of different capabilities there. But let's talk about how should I, the developer, think about ACEs? So ACEs are really the container control. So an ACE has a single immutable state. It's very like React, so you can think about it like React, but it's not React. It's not actually React under the hood, but it uses set state. So it's a very familiar approach to setting state and state management. It provides a context, so very much like SPFx, you have a this.context, which tells you where you are in the world. And then it's got all the lifecycle events you're familiar with. And then a few differences from SPFx, but generally speaking, it contains the lifecycle events for you. And then it hosts, manages, controls the various views. So pick how you like to describe that, but it is the host of the views or the view controller. Lots of obviously different view models out there in the world, but it hosts the views. The views live inside the ACE. And then about those views, you can have pretty much, I think, as many views as you want, but there's two types. The first is card view, and those are those little tiles. There's three fixed layouts and two sizes. The sizes are medium and large. So if we hop back real quick, a medium card is the single box here, and a large card is this larger of the boxes. So you can sort of have half of a mobile screen or stretch across the full mobile screen. One card view is required per ACE, but you can have multiple. You can have any number of those things. So, but one is required. And then those card views can act as a link. They can have one or two buttons. You need to have a large card size for the two buttons. And we'll talk about that all a little bit more when we get into the code. And then finally, the QuickView cards have no defined layout. So you completely control and define those layouts using the adaptive card schema or syntax, however you want to describe that. Those can have images, form elements, text, buttons, and more. Pretty much in my testing, everything seemed to mostly work from adaptivecards.io that I tried in there. So really neat, really flexible, very easy to build stuff out. And you'll see I was able to build out some fairly ugly, because I built them, but complicated interfaces pretty easily. And then you're not required to have a quick view card. So you can have just a card view that maybe links out to your Teams app or something like that. Or you can have multiple quick views to really, provide a little bit more interactivity in your ACE solution. So that's enough talking. Let's get to some code. The first thing I want to show you, I've got three samples here, and these are all now publicly available. But the first one is this basic card Deeplink here. And this is really the three samples I want to show today kind of start very basic and then work up to more complex. And the hope is, and I'm of course interested in the community's feedback on this, but the hope is that with these 3 samples, we've covered not exactly the specific task you're going to do, but the methods you might do generally to solve these tasks. So the first kind of card is a basic Deeplink card. We've given it a couple of properties here with a URL. That's a Teams Deeplink, it turns out, because it goes to a channel. And we'll hit preview there. And if we click on that, we're going to open up our Teams link. This would actually open up our Teams channel. And we're going to use the web app instead because I'm on my testing tenant. And we all know how fun it is to try and switch tenants mid-demo. So, but this is a test channel with some great conversations I've had here with myself over time. But that's it. That's a basic Deeplink card. That's what it does. I've got a card on the screen. I can click it and it links somewhere. So how did we build that? And that's this code here. So what we did is we've got our adaptive card extension, and these are scaffolded exactly like SharePoint Framework. You start with the Yeoman generator, you pick adaptive card extension. So where you have like web part application customizer, one of the new choices is adaptive card extension, and you get this all scaffolded out. Your main class is this ACE class, and that inherits here from the base adaptive card extension class, and it takes some props and state things. So that's very React-like. But again, this is not backed by React in any way that you will ever address or deal with directly, but it's very React-like. So it feels very familiar. It's very easy to build in this. And it's also very, very much like SharePoint Framework. So it's going to feel very familiar. If you've worked in SharePoint Framework and you start to pick up ACEs, I think you're going to get started very quickly. But there's some interesting differences. First off, you'll see we've got an on init. That should be familiar to everybody. We've got to set our initial state here. That's very React-like, very common thing to do there. But there's this new thing, Card Navigator. And so Card Navigator is sort of your index of all the views that can exist inside your ACE. And you have to set these things up kind of at the beginning here. And they have a string ID and this sort of factory function here. And one important thing to note is when I register this card, it's going to invoke my factory function, which can have other logic in it, right? I could do more than just say new. But once that's invoked, it's going to hold on to that card object that got created. It's not going to re-invoke this every time the card is shown. So something to keep in mind there for how maybe you structure your solutions and perhaps how you might build some things. There's a property down here, render card. This tells it what card to render. We've just, this is our very simple example. So we're just returning the CardView ID, which is just the same ID you can see we use to register the card. So we're saying, hey, render my card there. And then the other thing I'd like to show in this that I think is interesting, if we look at the property pane, this is where we've gone in and added our properties for link URL and Teams link. Again, very SharePoint Framework like, but you know, just want to show, kind of do the same things here, set our settings up. And then in our actual card views, as well as quick views, but this solution has no quick views. It just has the single card view. So we've got 3 different base classes you can inherit from. Those are the 3 fixed layouts for card views. There might be more, but currently there's 3. And that has to do with us trying to keep the dashboard clean and sort of consistent. But the data here is defined. And so I'll kind of dwell on this here and not in the next 3 demos. But the way to think about these views and this data property is you have an adaptive card sort of syntax or schema, and then you have this data. And so you've got your model, which is this data, and the view, which is the adaptive card, and those get mashed together to create what's on the screen. So this data, really think of this as producing the model for this view, right? And so this is very simple. We're just taking some stuff from our properties, we're just returning it. You'll see later we can do very much more complex things here, but right now we're just saying we've got our properties. That's the description and title. And then here is on our card selection. So this is when I actually click that card. You can do a couple different things here. In this case, very simple example, I've just showed you can have some super simple defaults. Like if we don't have a link defined, we're just going to send them to the best search engine on earth, Bing. And otherwise, we're just going to return our properties, the Teams link and the target URL, because we've got our URL up there from the properties. And that's it. We've built a card view that we can set the link for, and that will link us out to other stuff. So if I click on that, again, that's what we just saw. So we'll use our web app, and again, my great channel of me talking to myself, which we'll leave open for future demos. So give me 1 second. I'm going to Control C out of this, and I'm going to get the server started for my next one. And so we'll go back into edit mode here, and we'll take this guy off the screen. And we will wait a second for our server to get going for our second example. And our second example is looking to cover this idea of I need to get some information and show it to the user in a carousel pattern, right? We've all written carousels probably 1,000 times in our career. So I've written another one here and just want to kind of show that off because I think it's another very common scenario. I've called this one company news, but you can think about this being images or articles or emergency updates or company updates or any kind of pattern where you want to page through this stuff. While we're waiting for the server to spin up, let me see if there's any questions here. If it's not React, what is it? So the ACEs are not React. They are based on adaptive cards. So the adaptive cards in the background could be rendered with React. They could be rendered with React Native. They could be rendered with something else. That's the point of the adaptive cards, is they're going to give you that flexibility, or rather us that flexibility to take your work and render it across many different devices as natively as we possibly can. Somebody want to learn about technical underpinnings? We could do a session on that for sure. Can we have more than 3 card templates for Viva Card? So right now, the card views, those tile views, are restricted to 3 layouts right now. Post GA, that may change, but currently that's what is available. But again, for the quick views, you can do pretty much anything you want. So we'll go ahead and refresh this. I think we should be good to go here with our company news. And there's our company news. And so this loads on up. And I've already, one thing I've got to do here is, again, you need to set the card size to large to get the buttons down there correctly. We'll go into preview. And so this is my article title. I can click on this. I get my image. I get my article text, which you can see here. I did learn right now in adaptive cards, you can't parse HTML. So this is just the raw HTML from my input there. And I'm showing you can show the rest of this stuff in this view. But you can see, like, here's my image, here's my image, here's my title, here's my title, here's my little SVG icon. Here's my little SVG icon. Those are all being pulled from the same state. So you're just presenting the information from the ACES state in these different views. And I added some functionality here. You can actually like this article. It's going to go back and actually like it in SharePoint. We'll look at that here in a second. And I can click next, and I can click next. I think we're all familiar with this kind of thing. But this example, hopefully, is a very general example of I need to pull some content and I need to display that to folks in kind of this carousel scrolling manner. So I think that will cover a lot of that. But how did we write that? So let me find the right company news code. And so same thing we've got in here. We scaffold our adaptive card. And so we've got our extension. And sorry, I was looking at the chat for a second. We've got our extension here. Again, we inherit from the base card extension, but we've got a lot more going on in this example. We've got a card view and we've got our quick view. So this has the card view and then it has that quick view. So the card view is the part that had the previous and next buttons. The quick view is the part that popped up and showed us the full article. So in our on init, same sort of pattern here. We set our state, we register our views. So note there's a card navigator and a quick view navigator. Those are separate things, and you register your card views in one and your quick views in the other, but they work the same. So just note there are two different places to register those things. And then there's lots of different techniques to do this. This is something I like to do because we keep our contextual this and all our variables available. But I set a timeout. So this allows us to tell the JavaScript runtime engine, hey, next event loop, when you get around to it, do this stuff for me. And so what we're doing is we're getting an SP instance. This is actually using pmpgs, but the point isn't using pmpgs. The point is you can use any third-party library in here to do data fetching or any other operation you want to do. And all the bundling works the way you expect. All of the inheritance works the way you expect. Everything works exactly the way you're going to expect it to do. I just happen to have used pmpgs here, mostly because I wanted to test pmpgs that it worked in ACES. So set state, again, we're setting the state, calling set state with our updated articles. So we've gotten our articles and we're going to set our state there, and we're going to say our current index is 0. Up here, our index was -1. Now our index is 0, the first one in the group there. And the rest of this is pretty similar to what we saw before. We're rendering our CardView ID and so forth. So let's look at our CardView real quick. So our CardView has a little bit more going on in the data here. So we've got, if we have less than 0, right? So if our article index is at -1, we're going to return this kind of loading view. So this is just returning some hard-coded data that says loading, and it's got an SVG icon just as a string in here and so forth. And then we do return the selected article if one of the articles is selected in the carousel, right? So this is the current one that I've selected. And then we've got a property here we didn't see before, but this is card buttons. So card buttons, you can return 1 or 2 buttons or undefined. So there's no other choice, right? You can return 1 button or 2 buttons. And so what we do here is we kind of build up, this is our logic here to say, hey, do we need previous? Do we need our next button? And we just, put those buttons into this array and return them. So we're returning either 1 or 2 buttons, depending on how we are in the scrolling through our articles. And then on action, so on action is our event handler. So event handlers are sort of auto-subscribed to this on action event, or on action method rather. So you don't have to go for each button, add and on click and so forth. Every button is going to track through into this on action method. And you can kind of differentiate what happened by giving your buttons IDs. So you can see up here, I've got an ID of previous and next, which correspond to previous and next. And all we do is set the state in here. So we're going next, we're just adding 1 to our index, previous, subtracting 1, and setting state, very much like React, is going to reflow your rendering, and you're going to get your updated view. So this is showing us the clicking through, and that's the actual next and previous happening, right? So I click previous, we decrement our active index, and this reflows, and we see article 3, article 2, article 1, so forth. I think we're all familiar with how to go through arrays. But the next part of this is the QuickView. So this is the first QuickView we've looked at today, and QuickViews are another class that inherits from a different base class, or the same base class? Maybe the same, different base class, sorry. And so in here, we again have our data property, and this data property represents the model that we're going to bind to our adaptive card view. So trying to keep that in mind, sort of that mental model. And here we're doing another check if we don't have a selected article, but I've clicked on the thing. So imagine if somebody's just like very, very fast and they click it before you've had a chance to load the articles. We want to handle that, but we handle it pretty cheaply here and just put up a thing that says loading. Now here we're going to do a little bit more logic. So we've got a little bit more going on than we've seen so far today. So we're going to grab our articles out of the state. We're going to get the current item out of those articles based on the article index. We're going to grab the content from that item. Now, to save bandwidth, we're lazy loading the content. So we're lazy loading that big hunk of content, that big HTML block you saw, only when we actually click on and select those things. And so we come in here and we're going to set another timeout. This is a technique I really like to set timeout to get an async into the next event loop. You could also just have an async method you call, but there's some things here I like. I think this makes this a little cleaner, especially in situations like this where you kind of want to have these variables fall through and things. But so we're going to get an SP. We'll look at that SP code very briefly because that's not the point of the demo. But so we're getting our article contents, setting that item content, and then we're resetting our state here. So a couple of subtle things are happening here. So JavaScript arrays are by reference. So the fact I've gotten the item up here out of this array, I've changed that item and I reset the state with that same array. That's actually going to reset everything. That item in that array is updated, and we've reflowed our state with the new articles there. So, and then if we don't have any content, so this is kind of another sort of subtle thing here. So if we get the content up there and we don't have it, we're going to do this business with the set array. But while we're waiting, we're going to set that content to fetching. And then we're just going to drop through and return our model, which has the stuff. Because remember, we've loaded everything but the content at this point. So we can show people the title, primary text, and so forth. And then once the content's loaded, this set state will be called and we'll reflow, and it'll show the content then as part of our model. So that's a way to do that there. And then we've got an on action here again. So I'm trying to look back up here at some of the questions. So Mark's question is, so let content equal item. That's actually, those are two very different statements. So the let content equal item is actually destructuring item into content. So you would, your second statement to be equivalent would be let content equal item dot content would be the same equivalent statement there. Well, I don't know. We'll see about writing code at scale, I guess. So setting timeout here, we've got, this is our action to like the articles. And we're going to set the timeout, again, using that technique, and then doing similar operation here. We're going to get our articles, get that item that's selected currently, and then we're going to, if it's liked, we're going to unlike it. And if it is not liked, we're going to like it. And then we reset our item, and then we do the exact same operation to set state, reflow the rendering, and get our updated views. JavaScript shortcut, Mark, not TypeScript exclusive. So that's a JavaScript thing now. And so the other piece here I want to show you is our template. Bounce over here to our template. So adaptive card templates are created via JSON. AdaptiveCards.io is a fantastic website. They have tons of samples. They've got the full schema defined. That's how I learned all this. So I encourage you to check AdaptiveCards.io out. But these adaptive cards are just defined with JSON. And I'm not going to go through every little part of this, but you can have text blocks, images, action sets. So this is where we're actually putting our button in here to do the liking. Text block content. You have things like column set. So this is, you can set up tables, things like that. And then you can have a set of actions that also appear at the bottom of the screen. So this is, a fairly, in my view, simple adaptive card, but gives us that nice view again of, a click on here and we see our full article there. So great. So that is our company news rotate. Oh, shoot. I didn't, sorry. Let me look real quick. I wanted to show you as well the, not that one. I wanted to show you as well this one. Real quick, the pmpgs part, you can see this in the sample. I'm not going to dwell on this because that's not the point of this demo. But what I've done here is create my project preset. This is one of our samples. This is part of our guidance. But I've also extended web to using the extend factory functionality to have exactly the methods I need. So they're very easy and clean back in our other code. And the other piece of the pattern here is this get SP. So in our ACE, we have access to the context. This is just like SharePoint Framework. It's got a this.context. So we call the get SP in the ACE body, store that context, build up an SP, and then we actually will just keep using that same SP. And we can call this get SP then in our views where we do not have access to the context. So this is a little shortcut for the pmpgs stuff. You can check that out in the repository. Again, don't want to dwell on that. And so for our last one, which I think is the cooler of the samples here. So let me just get that going. And while that's running up, I will glance up at the questions here. I ignore something stupid. A reminder, we get spoiled by accelerator. Which version of adaptive cards is supported is a great question. I believe it's 1.2. It might be more. And there's a couple small caveats of things at this point that don't work exactly right yet in ACEs. So how is ACE related to Viva Connections? So ACEs are going to appear on the Viva Connections dashboard. So this is the way you can add V1.3 supported currently. So that question was answered up above. Thank you for that. So these are the way you can inject your extensibility into Viva. So the Viva dashboard allows you to create these cards and link out to your other applications, or link out to a Teams channel, or do other work, however you might need to do. This is your path to customizing the Viva experience. I've probably just upset a marketing person with saying it that way, but I stand by what I said. And let's scroll down here. And for our final one, this is a Teams chat. So we're going to come in here, and we need a link to a channel. And so, hey, here's a channel where I've been talking to myself a bunch. So I'm just going to get a link to that channel. We'll copy that. We'll come back over here. We're going to paste that there. And what you're going to see, hopefully, hey, good, it's working. So you've seen this now go out, and it's read 9 new messages in the channel. And here's the channel we're linked to, so you can check my work and count these messages. But some neat things here. So this sample here is going to show you a little bit more complicated patterns. We've got multiple card views. We've got multiple quick views, and we've got some real interactivity now in a form talking back to that Teams channel. So a couple things I want to show is if I come in here and I start a new conversation and I say, hello from the demo, we'll send that into the Teams channel. And if we are lucky today, this is going to update momentarily here. I think it takes about 15 seconds, give or take. Hey, 10 new messages. That's fantastic that it works. Love it. So this is neat. It shows us how many new messages we have. So you can imagine this on your mobile device, checking in, not necessarily just to Teams, but imagine this pattern. You're checking into a help desk ticketing system, or your email, or there's lots of things in our world, right, that are notification based now. So this pattern kind of shows you an approach to that. Now I can click the quick view. I'm going to caution folks, I'm a very, very good designer. So visually, this is probably the prettiest thing you're going to see, but it shows all our messages from the channel. So you can see here, hello from the demo there. And you can see you've got down the little text there. It says from Patrick. So we're able to get this information from the Teams channel. And now I want to go in here, and this cool little sunglasses icon, it actually says here, hello from the demo. I can enter a reply, hi there, right? I'm going to click my button. So there's a little rendering snafu there. But you can see I've said hi there. And if we go back to our channel, hey, it's always neat when the code works. We've responded to our Teams channel and said hi there. So I can close this. I can see my other messages. I can look at other messages. And they're all pretty much me just talking to myself. So it's not the most exciting chat. But the point of this is we've shown a pattern where we can go pull something, get information from it. We've got a quick view that shows us a list of things. And then we've got another quick view that shows us the detail of those things. And we've added interactivity into that quick view so we can interact with that thing that we're seeing the details of, right? That is probably one of the most common web patterns, right? So this sort of highlights how to do all that. Well, how did we do all that? Well, it just so happens we've got the code right here. So again, we scaffolded our extension using the Yeoman generator exactly as before. We're going to go into our adaptive card extension, and there's a lot more code in this one. So we've got 5 different views, 3 card views and 2 quick views. And we've got in our on init, we've registered all of our different views just as before, again, using the card navigator and the quick view navigator. We've set our initial state. Note one thing we're tracking here is the card view to render. So this is saying our base or our default view is going to be this one, which happens to be called default view. Make it easy on myself. And some of this other stuff, we're just going to null it up, -1s, no big deal. And then we have this method set up views. We'll come to that in just a second. And this is now, we're there. So here's set up views. And we're checking some things now. So we've got this idea that we have these views and we need settings to actually go to the channel. So the first thing we do is in our properties, do we have a channel link, right? And if we don't, we set the state card view to render, setting the state so we remember it in state, the set channel registry ID. And then we're calling this method of the card navigator replace. So this is a very important thing I want to point out, that while this, where is my render card? While this is called and tells you what card to render, this is only called on the initial rendering of the card. So even if this is controlled by state, it will not reflow if the value here changes. It's not checked, right? So you are responsible for using the methods of the card navigator. In this case, we're showing replace, and we're going to show another technique here in a second. So replace says whatever view you're showing, just get rid of it and this is the view I want you to show now. And remember, the views all share the same state. So there isn't a huge penalty here. You're setting the state as one thing and the view is another thing. So we're replacing our current view with another view that's just going to pull the current state and show itself to the world. In this case, it's our card that says, hey, we need some data. Go please set the channel there. And then I like regex is a great way to solve problems. So by introducing other problems. And so what we do is we use this to parse the stuff we need out of our channel link. So if you've ever looked at the team's channel link, you have all the information in there you need to understand how to communicate with that channel via graph. And so if our matches are null, or we don't have the number we expect, which is 3, we have another card we're going to show here, which is, hey, the channel link you gave us, we don't understand. That could be because you didn't give us a channel link that's correct, or perhaps channel links have changed, right? This could be a bug in our regex, which would be shocking to have a bug in regex. And then we're doing the same operation. We're replacing that card navigator view there. We're going to update the state again with our channel base URL that we've built from the values we captured there. We're going to set our card view to render. And again, we still have to do the replaces, right? So we're going to replace that. We've got our MS Graph client factory. So this is very much like SharePoint Framework built right in. So I'm getting it off of this.context, get client, got my client. And then I've got a module here I'll show you briefly, but again, graph isn't quite the topic of this demo, but we're passing in the client and the channel base URL. So a similar pattern to what you saw with the previous one, where we're sort of capturing those things so we can use this module in our views that do not have access to the context. And then we're getting a message reader here, and that reader actually is just it's going to pull the graph service, and anytime it has new messages, we're just going to add those to our state. This for production is not nearly correct, but for our sample, this shows the general idea of we need to get new messages, we need to add those to our state and update our state. So let's look then at some of our views. So I put all the card views in a folder. You can do this however you want to do it. It's really up to you, but I think this is nice because the card views are pretty compact single file things. And so this is really just saying, this is our default. So this is saying, we've got this many new messages. So our state messages length, that's our messages array, icon properties and so forth. And we are returning from our card selection, the quick view. And the view we're going to show is the message list, right? We're going to look at that in a second. These other two are just saying, hey, we could not parse the channel link, and hey, you must set a channel link to connect the channel. You could have each of these be like a generic error view that you set values on. Lots of ways to do that. I did this just because it's simple and clean. The next thing I want to show is the message list view. So this is taking the messages we've got in our state. Remember, this state is going to be constantly updated by this reader. So we don't have to keep worrying about, are there new messages in other places, right? We're just going to get our messages from the state and return those messages. We're going to require a template, and on action, we set the state of what the selected method is. And then here's the other option in QuickView Navigator. CardView Navigator works the same way. Here we're doing quick views, but we're doing push. So we're pushing into a stack of views, a new view, right? And you'll see in a second why we've done that. Real quick, looking at the template, this is a little bit more complicated template. Again, not going to go through this completely, but one thing to note here is, and where so in adaptive cards, you have this $sign data to which you can bind collections, and then the rest of the things in this block are essentially going to be a repeater, right? So it's going to do a column and it's going to do a subject from each message, right? And the user from each message. So you've got your data, and then adaptive cards is going to essentially repeat that. And you've got your action here to view. And you can see in the data, you can add things into this data property, data value things. In my case, I'm using the index. We go back and look. I'm getting the index there. That tells me the selected message, and I pushed our view in there. And I'm running out of time on myself, which is fine. And then message view is very similar. It's getting our messages, it's showing them off, setting our state on our action. We're doing some logic here to keep our polling going correctly. And we're setting timeouts, again, to load up that message content, those message replies. I'm not going to dive too much into the messages module. Do encourage you to check it out as you have time outside of this demo, but you can see how we've done readers. We've used generator functions as interesting pattern there to process delta next links. And then we've got our on message function that is returning out the actual messages from our generator as we get them. And then we've got different functions here to get message details, get message replies, but they're all using that client that we sort of grabbed a ref to with that init messages when we were still in the ACE.